What is madness? All right. What is madness? Well, madness to me is realizing that you truly know nothing. Right? This kind of realization is like, let's say you're a baby and your parents place you naked or maybe even dressed warmly. Let's say naked. At night while it's raining in the forest. Well, let's give it a full moon, yeah, just for the effect. And let's say instead of thinking that the baby doesn't know what's going on, let's think about it in this way. What if inside the baby is a fully conscious being, only it cannot express itself? And the thing is, when I think about my childhood, I cannot remember anything. Right? I often think I can remember, but I cannot. I cannot even remember who I was yesterday. Right? I can imagine from certain things, that I seem to have done. But right now, when I'm sitting here, when I'm in the moment, it doesn't exist anymore. It's just gone. And sometimes, because everybody's so busy clinging to ideas of the past and the future, to me, these things just vanish. It's like knowing you had a friend once, and then 5 years later you think, did I just imagine this? I sometimes have these kinds of things. And that to me, it's like, damn, right? I mean, if you put mad the other way around, it's like, damn. And I think that also there's some kind of meaning in there. Because I often feel like I'm going mad if I'm holding back the flood of emotions because it's too much. And then I'm just lying in my room and I feel like, I just want to smash my own head in. I don't do this, but there have been times where I hit my head once, and you often see that in crazy people. But then I also have a voice that says never do that again. Because that's like literally losing it, right? And then I don't know why often why people hit themselves. I think it's probably has something to do with hearing voices, because I hear quite a lot of voices. The only times when I don't hear these voices is actually when I'm doing something. When I'm doing what I feel like doing, but to get there, I have to make quite a lot of choices to have the stamina to face what I feel like I have to do. And that sometimes drives me insane. But I literally, as long as I'm sitting around doing nothing, I'm open for all kinds of mad stuff. I mean, I'm actually, when I'm sitting in my room, I'm literally torn apart. That's the sensation I had yesterday after I did mushrooms. Well, I still, I ate them, and then I was lying in my room, and I just came from 3 hours of being outside and hiking, and then fighting myself through the experience, which takes a bit of practice, that's for sure. So I never recommend to anyone anything, especially in terms of psychedelics. All I can say is it wasn't my first time at night in the forest alone on mushrooms. I've done this already a couple of times. So this is not beginner's level. This is like, okay, you have to do your homework, right? You start small. Because this can really drive you insane, the kind of stuff that is sometimes revealed to you. So truth can drive you mad. It's really hard to explain why. I think you can explain it like this. Let's say, yeah, maybe that's a good one. Let's say you as a being, as a soul or something, right? You have also some kind of growth potential. And now let's compare this with a tree. Let's take a tree, and a normal tree, it would grow roots, right? It starts as a sapling or as an acorn, like as a seed, and then it starts growing. And then the taller it gets, the more it also familiarizes itself with the environment, right? It spreads its roots into the ground, and it always grows a bit higher, a bit higher, a bit higher. And at each level of growth, there are also certain challenges. So until it reaches a certain height, right, it will have to, it doesn't really face off herbivores or something, but it has to deal with wind on a different level, right? That's a challenge. So usually also a young tree is much more bendable. It's much more flexible. And the taller it gets, the tougher it gets. And the better it can also resist storms, but only to a certain degree. Because you also have to understand, if you grow tall as a tree, right, at a certain height, there's nobody to protect you anymore. What protects you in a forest are other trees, right? But if you're growing on the outside of the forest or on the periphery, right, you're more exposed to wind and, all kinds of things. Also, the chance of being hit by lightning is much higher when you're somewhere alone on a hilltop, as opposed to being part of a collection. So when you grow as a young sapling, right, you also have the protection of, all these parent trees. And then the taller you grow, right, different kind of things are going to happen. There's different challenges at each height. And now let's say you take a tree and you give that a lot of fertilizer. Then it might be that the tree grows way too fast. Way too fast. And that means that it would reach a certain height without having had the time to build out its roots properly. Because due to the fertilizer, it actually didn't have to grow strong roots to dig deeper into the ground, because all the nutrients were easily accessible. And that means it would miss a lot of strength. And that would mean, of course, that it would be much more easily shaken by wind, and it might actually be that it would collapse far easier than if it would have just grown much slower and more natural. Plus, once the fertilizer stops coming, the tree actually also must adapt then to not having the fertilizer, because now that's what has kept it going all this time. And that probably brings me to the challenge also of not eating sugar, but also, ingesting psychedelics in general. So if you see yourself as a being that can reach different kinds of consciousness, different states of consciousness, and now let's say we just say we have 100 levels. There's probably much more to that, because there are states of consciousness and you can learn to balance them. But the thing is, after you've learned the next one, there's like the next one already lined up. So it doesn't stop. It just gets like you get more used to it because you grow used to certain heights. And then you learn to surf at these new heights as well. Surfing is like my thing for being balanced and stuff, right? Anyway, so, because you have to work for your ability to surf, right? You have to actually put a lot of work in it. It's very strenuous. Like you have to put many hours into paddling and learning to stand on the surfboard. It's very hard. Also to get the timing right. I only did it like 2 or 3 times, but that already showed me it's very, very hard. And, I'm already trained in stuff like slacklining. But in general, if you think about it, now let's say you're at level 5, consciousness-wise. Maybe your level is like drink alcohol, right? And you barely manage to stand straight when you drink alcohol. And then you go around and suddenly you ingest something like psychedelic mushrooms. I mean, that stuff can like really rip you apart. Because suddenly these mushrooms boost you, let's say, to level 8 or 15. It doesn't even have to be that high. But you don't know, right? You don't know how strong they are. You don't know where they're going to push you. And you also have to understand that if you grow spiritually, at each level there are certain tasks that you have to master, certain emotional topics that you have to face. And if you're not ready for that, that shit can really rip you apart. I mean, imagine having to face the death of your grandma, right? Something that you've buried really deep in yourself. Because psychedelic mushrooms are also the door to the underworld. And so let's say, right, you're at a party, right, and somebody gives you mushrooms and you think it's a good thing to take it there and you just ingest it. And at some point you just start screaming. Yeah. Why do you start screaming? Yeah, it might be that the emotional pain of having lost somebody, right? I mean, these things aren't rational. Like, you can have severe emotional pain for having been spanked once as a child. I mean, I'm not joking about this. You can feel severe emotional pain because at the age of 15, right, your girlfriend broke up with you. This stuff is like, emotions are really crazy. I mean, these things, you think sometimes it's way over top. Sometimes I think, how is it possible that I feel so much pain sometimes? I literally feel like, how is it possible that I feel so much pain? Because sometimes it isn't just your pain that you're feeling. Sometimes it's also the pain of other people. And some people are in incredible pain. It's like an emotional thorn that's sticking right in the very center of your heart. Right? And to take that out is like, holy shit. I mean, that really hurts. And so, right, I mean, some people, they just take psychedelics. Yeah, and then they go mad about it. Because it's too much. Right, it's like being thrown into a volcano. It's gonna engulf you. Right, it's like an entire ocean of emotion inside of you. I mean, that's what you are. You are basically energy. And emotions are energy. And when you stir something up on the inside, that's like you take psychedelics, suddenly you're diving into your very self. And you don't know what kind of beasts are swimming around in the ocean of madness that's inside of you. Because that's the kind of chaos, right? That's emotion, pure emotion. And if you don't know how to handle that, I mean, you're gonna go nuts about it. That's why usually people learn to do these things on some kind of ceremonies, right? Or they have a guide with them, right, that keeps them safe. Because some people, right, you give them mushrooms, sometimes, I've had this multiple times, not just on mushrooms. I mean, I'm gonna tell you this story. I was somewhere in Cologne in the forest. And yeah, I was somehow forced to sleep there. Because who I was staying with, her parents didn't want me, for some reason, doesn't really matter to you, to stay there, so I slept in the forest. And, also that doesn't really matter. But anyway, what happened was, I did rapé. And then somebody called me. I first went for a walk, and then I came back, and then I checked my phone because I had my stuff there. And then somebody called me and said, hey, this and that happened. You can actually come back and sleep here. And so I packed my things, and I've been at the same place. I knew where I was, but it was already starting to get dark. And now comes the crazy part. That's what sometimes happens. So I was alone in the forest. I did have my phone with me, and then I started walking with all my stuff. And as soon as I took 5 steps, I suddenly lost all my orientation. I had no idea where I was anymore. But I also realized I simply had to keep walking. So to me, it was obvious, I couldn't turn back. I simply had to keep walking. And it felt like I was blind. Normally I have quite a good intuition. And I still, of course, I had a good intuition because I still managed. But I simply kept walking. But in such situations, if you don't know how to keep calm, because I simply, I know how to calm myself. But this kind of situation can drive you mad, right? That's why people, they sometimes go into the forest, they do mushrooms. I mean, they just get lost. I mean, it might be that you wake up 3 days later, I don't know, with a broken leg. But for me, I know how to navigate these things. I cannot explain to you why. It's just how it is. I'm just a different being. I'm quite hardy for some reason. That's just my spirit, right? Other people, they really don't know how to handle these things, but for some reason I simply know. And that's why I can talk about these things, and it might seem to you like something worth trying, but I'm telling you that I also have adequate experience, and I didn't start by doing these things alone in the forest. because I know this stuff can drive you literally mad. Right? You just have to imagine, let's say, you have a fresh wound somewhere. I don't know. Maybe somebody pierced you with a knife, or maybe that's a bit extreme, right? But just imagine you have a flesh wound somewhere, right? And somebody comes and he just pokes his finger in there like, bam! That's what psychedelics can do. If you have an emotional wound and you take psychedelics, what? It can actually be that, it's just like somebody driving your finger into an emotional wound. You don't know what's gonna happen then. Because suddenly there's like an explosion of feeling inside of you, and you're just gonna go mad. So you have to know how to heal that kind of stuff. So if you're ignorant to what psychedelics do, which most people are, like literally most people, so after a while most people stay away from them. I certainly started to do them less. Because I realized that if I do psychedelics today, I have to work with what I was shown and what I felt and what I realized for the next couple of weeks. It's like intense homework. So once in a while I do this just to have more stuff to work on. So I feel like, okay, now it's time, and then I do it. But like today, for instance, like yesterday was the new moon. I did mushrooms in the forest alone. I came back and, sometimes it was almost too much to keep walking, but I managed. And then I was lying here and I felt incredible bliss and peace. But you also have to understand this feeling goes away. And that's what really fucks with your mind. Because you want to get back to that feeling. And that's why so many people get addicted to cannabis, because they started to feel, incredibly peaceful. And they try to recreate that feeling, so they continue to smoke. Well, that isn't the way to go. You have to stop smoking and then learn how to get there by yourself. And that's the hard part. That's where the real work starts. Smoking is easy. Anybody can smoke. Yeah, anybody can eat hash cookies. But to work to get there by yourself? Yeah. It's just psychedelics show you something and then you work with that. Right? Sometimes they show you a lot of shit, and sometimes they show you incredible beauty. But whatever it is, right? You just remember how it felt like, and then you try working towards that. And that means you have to work through all the shit that's holding you back from feeling like this. But the way I feel every time I think I'm there, I turn around a corner and I've lost it again. But it gets easier to go back there, because the more experiences you make on, okay, how did I get there last time, the easier it's gonna be to remember what you can do to get there. But it's also pretty random stuff. I mean, the stuff I do to get to the place where I can sit here and talk comfortably without hating it and without feeling like I'm a piece of shit and I hate myself and I hate life, which is basically describing how I felt this entire day, literally. Like the whole day was a drag, and suddenly I sit here and I talk and it's fine. I cannot tell you what I all did. Watched a movie, right? Watched porn. Did rapé. made 2 videos for YouTube, made 2 images for Instagram, recorded a song, ate peanut butter, ate salad, ate oats with peanut butter, drank tea, slept. It's incredibly random. But while I sit in this room, I also am still aware that it's like, it's far from being clean. Partly I also feel like I want to go outside, but I also really don't, because I have like 2 cuts on my foot and they're giving me a hard time. So I'm constantly on the verge of just punching through a wall, because there's something like working on me. And so I'm trying to work that out, this kind of emotional stuff. I mean, just to clarify, it's like 2 or 3 in the morning. I don't have to check the time. On top of that, I'm also torturing myself by, continuing to play chess, and I'm just losing all the time. And that makes me incredibly angry. It's like, whoa. But also, I'm getting used to it. Right? If I feel like I'm a loser, well, I just have to learn how to lose, right? And just take it, because if you pay attention to what's happening and why you lost, you can actually learn from that. And that's what really pisses me off. I'm just sick of losing things. Not just anything, especially people that I love. To lose the place where I can love them. I'm sick of that. Because that always happens to me, and that drives me mad. Because every time I have them, suddenly they're gone. Every time I have myself, I'm gone again. Right? And so I sit here and I talk because it gives me stability. And that's why I do nothing else. Because I realize as long as I'm creative, I'm fine. If I don't do that, I'm a fucking mess. I mean, even more so. I mean, now it's just like outside mess, but at least I know as long as I stay creative, it's getting better. And that's why that's all I want to do. I just want to be here and be creative and do my stuff. But yeah, that also means it's incredibly painful. Because when you're creative, it's like psychedelics. You're just constantly working on yourself emotionally, because that's where my creativity comes from my suffering, my emotions. I draw an image, that's my emotions, that's all my pain, it's all my anger put into an image. And there's a lot of that in me. And I realize it's not just, those things aren't just all me, because sometimes I draw an image, I realize, that's somebody else. I transform stuff from other people, and that drives you insane. Because if you have the feeling you aren't even doing that because you have problems, no, you're doing it because other people have problems. But that's then also where you say, okay, I can actually contribute. If I just do it, no matter what, I'm just doing it. I don't know whose stuff this is, but it's stuff and I'm working through it. And sometimes it literally drives you insane. Some people feel so shit. And I can connect to them on a very deep level. And sometimes I forget that it's not my shit, it's their shit. And then I become that. Yeah, and that can drive you mad. Literally can drive you mad. So what's madness? Yeah, I would say it's overwhelming, insight, overwhelming emotions, overwhelming truth. It's like, if you take psychedelics, you're too high, it just knocks you out. Right? You have nothing to hold on to because, your roots aren't strong enough. Because if you take psychedelics, you grow upwards for a short period of time. But you have nothing to hold you on the ground. And that's why, doing this kind of physical stuff, grounding, going barefoot in nature in general, it really makes you stronger mentally. So if you have mental strength, you can withstand all this stuff. Well, that takes a while. It really takes a while. You have to do a lot of cleansing and physical exercising and mental strengthening to become strong, so that you can withstand all these emotions. Because if you don't manage, they just pull you into the depth and you'll be devoured, and that's then depression. And then to fight yourself out of that, it's quite difficult. But yeah, eventually you'll either learn, I don't know, or you become like Kurt Cobain or something, right? Well, he didn't manage. Cheers, right? Bye-bye. And I don't believe that there's a next time around. I'm here now. I don't know. I don't think I'm ever going to be back like this again. Right? That's what I think. There might be, a cycle of birth and death, and maybe you are being reborn, but it's not going to be you as you see yourself today or in 10 years. Maybe your spirit is similar, but your spirit fills itself with whatever it needs in this life to survive. That's what I believe. And accepting that can turn you mad as well.